worried that you might be the cool kid? You wear the latest fashions on top of all the trends. Or have you ever worried you were too much in the mainstream? Always so generic, more normal than your friends. Well, we've devised a test to put to rest your fears. There's no need to panic if you lend us your ears. Tonight you can't sleep easy after all that you've heard. Cause if you like the show, then you're probably a nerd. Oh, Canon, it's Canon, it's all. Tyler, Phil, and Boris. Oh, Canon, it's Canon, it's all in Canon.
It's Monday, and you know what that means. It's time for a new episode of the It's Canon podcast, a podcast where I love to talk about all things, everything, especially news about comics, books, toys, Legos, video games, TV shows, anything and everything. And the best part of it all is that it's all in canon. We're your hosts. I'm Boris, and this week I am joined by Phil.
Did you know it was National Take a Nap Day today?
Did you partake?
I did. I finished work and I had a nap.
Man, I wish I could do that.
That's why I woke up and I'm like, holy crap, I got to get my computer booted up. I got to reconfigure my space for the podcast because, oh man, did it ever kick in hard with that time change.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about the time change. Man, yeah,
Yep.
So technically it's, 7:30 now. Yeah, that sounds about right. Old man Phil needing his old man nap.
Oh, big time. You know, that's why Tyler's not here this week. He just couldn't handle the time change.
Well, remember, he's already an hour ahead, right? So, like,
exactly
where he lives.
We're recording at midnight. Come on.
Must be for him. All right. It is just Phil and I this week. We have a lot to get to. We're going to be talking mainly TV shows because there was a little known show. I don't know if you've heard about it, everyone. It's called The Last of Us. They had their finale last night. We're going to be talking about that. And then we have a very, very interesting episode of The Mandalorian to talk about because I am seeing reactions from all over the place on this one. And you and I really haven't talked about it unless, we just briefly had a couple messages and then we cut it short because, again, we like to discuss stuff fresh for this show. Tyler, I know you're not listening, but get better. Hopefully he'll be back next week, but I know, everyone knows he's been still, having his up days and his down days with his chest and everything. So hopefully he feels a little better. But Phil, how are you, especially after said nap?
Said nap was filled with all kinds of disturbing imagery because before I had said nap, the work day was grinding down. And so on a screen in my workspace, which is also where I'm sitting at and talking to you from, I had tuned it to the remainder of The Last of Us that I had. So I had some really bizarre dreams because one thing that I've noticed in life is nap modes have probably the highest incident of drivable dreams because you're not in that deep REM kind of sleep.
Right.
So therefore you're kind of having a conscious dream in a way because you can influence them with your rational mind, but then your dream becomes a little bit of an argument, I find, where it's like rational mind is trying to say, no, don't do that. And irrational mind is going, well, if you don't do that, then I'm going to do this.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. Right. It's just, that's how she blows, right? Like, here's the thing, though. Also, I you know me, right? Like, I'm not a huge fan of taking any medication, right? Like, for me to take medication, I have to really feel like shit, especially sleeping pills. Not a fan of sleeping pills for many reasons. I think they're very addictive. I think that they can really fuck you up, especially if you're not sleeping properly, right? So, having said that, to my point, my sleep's been really, really bad the past few weeks. Just a lot going on, super busy. And then when banks start collapsing, that keeps you up at night, literally, right? Especially what we'll talk about in a little bit. But over the past few weeks, I've just been getting really shit sleep to the point where like I would be up 48 hours straight, right? And I'm like, okay, I can't do this. Something needs to give, right? Or else I will literally start going insane. Anyways, short story long. I started taking through the recommendation of my friend Jane. She brought up the fact that hey, you should try the sleeping pills, the Walmart brand. Let me fucking tell you this. Like literally the Walmart brand. Let me fucking tell you this, my friend. The dreams that I get off of these Walmart brand sleeping pills gets up with the craziest shit you've ever dreamt of. It's absolutely insane. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, well, that's when you got to start a dream journal.
Yeah, I do. It's called All My Podcasts.
Oh gosh, because I'll bet if you're like me, and I don't know if anybody can relate to this, but I can wake up from a dream and remember every single detail that seems important to me, and like 5 minutes later, I'm like, "What was I dreaming about again?"
Right?
It's
I'm
just
the same way.
Gone.
Yep.
So that's why I say the dream journal, buddy. You can just
crazy.
Scribble it all out.
That's crazy sometimes, man. But luckily, like I'm starting to slowly get back on a good sleeping pattern. Good for me, right? Good for me.
Yeah. Healthy.
Which I don't recommend anyone to have a sleeping pattern like me. Like, honestly, sometimes I don't know how I function.
I ask myself the same thing from time to time.
Right?
I know what you're like. I see you because sometimes I'm like something stupid I did on Saturday night, for example, was I've got a friend who has that Plex server. He's collecting movies. Not to say that I watched this one off of it, but wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I watched that one Man Named Otto, or Man Called Otto.
Man Called Otto. Tom Hanks.
Yeah, with
kinda
Tom
plays
Hanks.
Like a loner. It's like one of those. Yeah.
Yeah, like I wasn't sure what to expect because the ads, the trailer for it made it look semi okay. Like it's just exactly that, like grumpy old men, except there's only one of them.
I could have told
You
you
know
it
what I
wasn't
mean?
like that at all, but sure.
Yeah, but
how did that
I had
feel?
watched the previews a long time ago. I just knew that the movie looked kind of interesting because Tom Hanks. And oh my goodness, did that ever just emotionally destroy me?
Yep.
Because of the amount of intense stuff in it. Now, I related hard and I went like really deep on relating to this older dude and thinking of him just like my dad. And then that was the downfall for me because then the guy has the struggles with himself and starts coming to these inevitable conclusions that are really, really overpoweringly emotional to watch, especially if you've had people in your life who have attempted to take their own lives. So I would recommend two things. Be prepared if you do want to watch that movie. But secondly, if you're having those types of thoughts, I know you and I talk about this in terms of like the mental health things that go on and even in our own worlds. If you feel you need to talk to somebody, reach out. Because, yeah, that at the end of the day, that was what I got out of all this. Yeah. So, but man, I even put off the second half of the movie until the next day.
Right.
And I watched it then and I thought I had no more emotion left in me. And apparently I do. But these are the types of things that I'll go to Boris at 1 a.m. and say, I started watching this. Yeah. I started watching this and oh my God. And normally Boris will be like, oh man, don't do that. Like within 3 minutes. Now, luckily Saturday night, you seem to be sleeping, which I took as a very good sign.
Oh God, no. No.
Oh no.
So I have my Signal open. We use Signal to communicate because, in quoting and many reasons. So let me see this. Sunday, 1:15 a.m. Oh, geez. A man called Otto. Fuck.
Yep.
I didn't. It's funny. Like, so yesterday I had a very busy day. I'll talk about that. And I actually didn't respond to Phil until Sunday night, like at 11:30. I'm like, holy shit, it's a clusterfuck. So that's that. Now, I was out on Saturday. Yeah, it was a Boris night. It was a Boris night. Need I say more?
Oh no.
Yeah, I was out with my friend, actually, the aforementioned Jane, and it was a shit show. It was a shit show. I did not even attempt to go to the TFC game because I was nice and warm and happy and snuggly, and it was having a great time. Didn't want to deal with the crowds. Didn't want to deal with all the security. Didn't want to deal with the fucking cold because how was it? Like, it was still somewhat snowing a little bit and like minus holy fuck.
I didn't go, but yeah, it was cold as hell. But we did miss, just to annotate this, we did miss one interesting thing, and that is TFC used drones to do displays in the sky. And they didn't realize that the coldness of the weather would affect the batteries. So the drones started falling on the crowd.
Yep.
So apparently it was just like you'd see this light just come down on the north stand. Like, my God.
Oh, I love that. I love the smartness of that corporation sometimes.
It's not only them. Apparently it's all drone operators because most of them work out of the States. And when they get a contract up here, they come up here and they have no idea how cold it gets.
And I think people legitimately do forget that, hey, cold weather, your battery drains a lot quicker, right? Like, I don't think people realize that, right? Like,
I think
there's a reason why
you have
minus
an electric car.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, that's a whole other discussion that we should have one day. But even your cell phone, right? You take out your cell phone in the winter, it's going to drain a lot faster than any other time of year. Which is why you should not take it out when it's in the blistering cold. I remember once I was using a test phone. This was when I was still working at BlackBerry, and those batteries were a shit show half the time. Just like the test phones, not BlackBerries. BlackBerries had great batteries, but the test phones, the beta phones, or whatever you want to call them. I remember once, full battery, 100%. It was snowing. It was shitty weather. Take out my phone, turned off. Went from 100 to 0 in like 5 minutes.
Ugh. Yeah.
That's why I always carry two phones back then, because I had to carry the test phone, but 99% of the time there was an issue with it. I couldn't send messages or something, right? So I always needed to carry a second phone. Anyways, back to what we're talking about. So yeah, Saturday I was busy. Didn't go to the TFC game. Clearly you didn't go to the TFC game. Tons to talk about there. I cannot wait for you and I and Chris Keem to have that discussion about this Apple Plus deal.
Oh, I was fit to be tied Saturday night with Apple TV Plus. Oh, and I like them.
Right.
Oh,
right.
Parlez-vous français? Oui, oui. Oh.
Yeah, I heard about that. What else was going on, man? This weekend was a tough one just because seeing the news of everything that was going on south of the border with the two banks that closed. Again, we'll talk about this in a little bit, but that kind of just had me completely concerned because I know it's a fact that some of my customers use said banks. That's all I'm going to say. So you just never know what's going to happen. No one really knew what was going to happen until Sunday morning when they kind of said, hey, you all should be good. But really, until this morning, you didn't know what we were going to wake up to. It was crazy. So, yeah, that was my weekend in a nutshell. Yesterday, just had a lot on the go. So I'm like, sometimes I disappear, and it's more mental health break than anything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what I always assume, because I know you're not going to bite off on something at 1:30 in the morning if you've got something else going on or you just feel you can't do it. But it just makes me laugh because normally those messages are read.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, oh, dude, come on.
I know, right? It's funny because
please.
You send them just for the sake of sending them, right? You don't actually expect the response or anything at that time.
No, not at all. I'm just making conversation for whatever you get to it. And yeah, just like our shrinking conversations. I usually take notes, like one-liners from the show that just really snapped with me, and send them to Boris, and then see if he figures out what I'm talking about, which I know he does.
Oh, more often than not. My favorite one was from a couple weeks ago. The what was it? Calling my vagina Florida. Never call my vagina Florida.
Yeah. Never fucking call my vagina Florida.
Yeah, you can call my vagina any state you want, but you do not fucking call it Florida.
Yep. Well, this week was much tamer. I liked That's Good Stick.
Yeah.
Harrison Ford did that in the opening, and I was just like, the context with the fun dip and everything, I was like, oh, goodness. And then later on, Jason Segel, I'd be here quicker if I didn't have to stop at 3 gas stations to get fun dip for you because apparently my boss now likes stick.
And again, I love that because it's a joke from 2 weeks ago, right? Like, that show is so well written. Again, I'm so happy that it was announced as the finale was coming out, that it got renewed for a second season. I'm really happy for everyone.
Yeah.
You know, because everyone did such a fantastic job on that show.
Yep. I have had very positive feedback from my friend group about it, about those that I've shared it with. And I'm so excited to see a season 2. And yeah, I just like, we're living in a world right now where we're going to get 2 more episodes of Shrinking. And we're going to be watching Ted Lasso season 3 this week. Like, in the next 2 weeks, it's double duty of amazing, happy shows.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like, that's the thing. I love the overlap that Apple planned as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's Shrinking has got 10 seasons or 10 episodes in the season. That was episode 8, I believe, on Friday. So, yeah, it's a great place. It really is, because I love that overlap. It's the same with Star Wars, you know, getting double duty with Mandalorian and the Bad Batch. For me I know we don't talk about the Bad Batch, but this week's episode was pretty darn good.
We can talk about it. We can always talk about it. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but yeah.
Okay.
We'll talk about it as we lead into the Mandalorian, because I feel like the timing was good on those episodes. Really enjoyed them. But yeah, so we got Ted Lasso coming up this Wednesday, my friend.
Yep.
I am so looking forward to this.
I just love the content and the style. I hope that, unfortunately, to go to a point that I will be making with Mandalorian, I hope they don't change the writing format. Right? Like, I hope that they keep the goodness good.
Yeah.
Not that I don't like change, but change can be difficult sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that I've noticed, and I will bring up in more detail. Something else that I did watch this week was Everything Everywhere All at Once, because I wanted to beat the Academy Awards, because I just had this feeling this movie is going to be blown up. I've seen it briefly before, like a movie that was on in the background, but I actually bought the 4K Blu-ray this weekend because it was on for $20 on Amazon. So I thought, well, with that discount, I don't know, maybe this shoots north when it wins Best Picture. So I was just like, yeah, that was a fun movie. And it was touching too. It had a good message.
Yeah, right? Like, I just loved, like, it was such a well thought of movie, right? Like, every life decision comes together at some point, blah, 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 blah. I don't want to give away too much. But I was actually having this conversation with Matt on BAM Weekly earlier today. And that's, you know, I know some people who started the movie, but were so lost in that first hour that they gave up on it. And that was it. It's like, no. That, like, Everything Everywhere All at Once, that is a movie that you need to actually watch it through to fully understand what's going on, get the message, and by God, that movie can make you tear up.
It can, and as well, it probably does a better job at explaining the metaverse than Marvel has, or the you know, the multiverse. It's done a better job at explaining a lot of stuff. And I thought, you know what, you're right. You can lose yourself in the first hour of that film. But I thought that's where it was really important that the pacing of it was just getting more and more absurd, right? The more they were in the IRS office, the crazier things got. And then at that point, I was like, I really want to stick with this to see what's going on. You know, when she's fighting her daughter and the daughter's pulling out big floppy dildos, I'm like, I'm all in now. Like, this is crazy. This is just nutty TV. This is like Saints Row, whatever version that I was playing, and my friends and I are batting each other with giant dildos, and I'm like, this is video gaming. Right.
Well,
here.
but that's literally what I mean, right? Like, you need to watch the full thing to appreciate it well, right?
Yeah.
And really appreciate like what's going on.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying, is that pacing was great for just getting more and more absurd to draw you in while it explains itself. And yeah, anyhow, I just congratulations to the people who made that movie, because yeah, it's just bloody incredible.
Yes. Oh, fantastic movie. We'll talk a little bit about, let's talk about that right now while we're going through things. Let's talk about the Academy Awards. I'm not a huge fan of the Academy Awards for many reasons, right? But it's pop culture. It's something to talk about, gives us something to talk about, brings up some very good debates, right? So, yeah, let's start here. Best visual effects went to Avatar: The Way of the Water. They beat out Top Gun: Maverick, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, The Batman, and All Quiet on the Western Front. I don't think it's a huge surprise that James Cameron was going to get that one, just because, the Academy. We have to remember the way that the Academy is, right? A bunch of old people voting for stuff.
There's that, and I think out of all those movies, I think that the visual effects are probably the most, I don't know, impactful. Like it's a big part of that movie. Well, and I know that it's not a measure. I know that this award isn't a measure of how much
or how
CGI
good.
Was in it.
Or how good.
Or how
Here's
good.
The thing, right? I think the second part that a lot of people need to remember about the Academy Awards is the fact that a lot of it is how your movie is marketed to the Academy.
Yeah, that's true. Now, I haven't seen Quiet on the Western Front. I know your nephew is all about that movie.
He loved
I saw his Instagram thing today. So I'm going to go and give that a try. I think it's on Netflix.
It is.
I'm going to go and give that a shot, because heck, who hasn't heard that title, right? Like, that's a famous book. So
yeah, a very famous book. 3 movies. You had one in the 30s, you had one after that, and you got this new one, right? Like, and I've seen them all.
Yeah.
Read the book. Loved every version, every iteration of this. This one had probably the most changes from the book, but it was very good. I really did like it. And by the way, that was like our weekly shout out to Alex.
Yeah, we have to do that.
Exactly.
I was going to reply to him on Insta.
I know, right? Here's one that I was a little perturbed about. Best sound. So Top Gun Maverick won. They beat out All Quiet on the Western Front, Avatar: The Way of the Water, Elvis, and The Batman. Here's my issue with this best sound. You know what an F-45 is going to sound like, or whatever plane they're using. I don't care, right? You know where I'm going with this, right? You know what that's going to sound like. But in The Batman or Avatar, they literally had to create sound effects. They literally had to make things up, because even something like The Batman, there's no such thing as a Batmobile. You can assume and make assumptions on what the Batmobile is going to sound like, but people had to engineer that sound to put it all together to make it sound like something. Even in the fight scenes of the Batman, it just wasn't one guy slapping meat. They added bass, they added oomph to kind of get a new sounding punch to it. Everyone knows that scene from the trailers,
baseball
right?
Bats and cabbage, baby.
Yeah, so this is my issue, right? Like, I feel like Top Gun Maverick won just because a bunch of old people wanted to give Tom Cruise kudos. Because remember, Phil, Tom Cruise saved films.
Yeah,
I hate that message that's been going around.
Like, look, it was the first movie that did really well at the box office post-pandemic. There's no doubt about that. But I hate the assumption that it saved film because it's an inevitability that we're going to go back to the theaters en masse. There's going to be a spectacle that's so bright that we can't keep away, i.e., like an Avatar 2, right? Like, or, that type of thing. That's just, we've heard about it for 10 years. It's finally in the theaters. Disney has it. It's going to be a ride at Disney. It's going to be this thing. I'm not saying that Disney should win it, but I'm just saying Top Gun seems to be, in my opinion, for most Academy Award categories, the lame duck. The story was Star Wars and just expanding on characters from the first movie. It was pretty much essential. You had to watch the first movie for it to make sense. And I don't know about Avatar 2. I don't know. Maybe you need to see the first movie there too. But for sound, that's something that, like you say, it should go to creativity,
right?
Not to.
Okay. Before we continue with categories, here's the thing that makes me laugh. And this is, and it's kind of like a catch-22, because as much as I don't think, like you said, Disney deserved it or would have deserved it, or Disney could have saved cinema, because they could have if they had the balls to wait on some of the movies that they released.
Yeah. Yeah, that is true. Like, a lot of this stuff was the industry doubting itself or being in a hurry to get its content out. Like, look at, again, it's a sidestep, but you look at what Iger's doing versus JPEG. Like, some of the news headlines out this week are, we're going to cut down on Marvel movies. Like, my God. This is, it's the speed at which everything's coming out right now is escaping quality control. That's the takeaway that the fans have. That's the impression. In my opinion.
Know what's funny? I'm gonna put on my Tyler hat right now. I feel like Iger is literally contradicting the manual that he left Chapek. He left Chapek a manual. He essentially told Chapek what to do. It failed, and Iger now swoops right in and looks like the savior of Disney.
Well, I think cynically you're right. But all the skerfuffle that I've heard out of that whole exchange was that Chapek had his own idea how he wanted to do things. And again, like we discussed, Chapek's manner around dealing with an issue is miles different than Iger's, but I think they both get the same thing done, which is kind of funny. But the Scarlett Johansson issue is my front and central.
Yeah.
Iger would have taken her out to dinner and gotten everything sorted out for Black Widow to release on Disney Plus. And Chapek decided to take her to court and say that she's got enough money. Like, what? And guess who lost?
Yeah.
It was Chapek. He had to take the bone on that one. And I just think that in both cases, Scarlett Johansson got paid. In both cases, it released on Disney Plus.
It was the optics.
Like, both achieved the same thing, but one could have been frictionless and confidential, and the other one had to play out in public.
Well,
and that damages the brand. That damages the optics on Chapek, which makes the shareholders uncomfortable, which makes them go, we want Iger to come back and do the dirty work again.
Well, remember also, right? Disney is the company that is the evil corporation, but they have somehow been able to hide that fact, right? And I think that Chapek kind of, to your point, Phil, Chapek kind of made it known how evil Disney can be.
He showed the hand. Well, and how cynical the business is. It really is all about the profits. But when we're watching 23 Avengers movies in these phases, we're doing it because we're excited for the Avengers. We're excited to see Thanos get defeated. Then we realize, holy crap, I've been supporting this for a really long time, and I have 23 Blu-rays in my shelf. on
23
top of
Blu-rays,
23 tickets.
an ex-wife, few ex-girlfriends, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah. But you know what I mean? Then you
Yeah.
realize the totality of it, because you're like, I can't even fit the collection on a shelf at this point. I can fit Star Wars on a shelf
For now.
for now. Exactly. But that was the thing, right? Now I'm seeing it in the Star Wars stuff as well. And the quality isn't always there. And I'm not saying that I'm unhappy with that. I am saying that they have to be more careful with it.
Yes.
And that's, I do like it when Iger comes out with statements like he said this week.
But that's the thing, Phil,
Proof
right
is in the
there.
pudding.
It's being selective. There, in this corporate world, there always needs to be that devil's advocate to say, are we sure we need that fifth movie this year? Are we sure we need that extra Disney Plus show this year? Are we sure that we want to be releasing this right now to create this insane calendar for people?
Yep. And you know, I've heard whispers and rumors, just like we've heard Aquaman 2 is a terrible mess for DC. I've heard whispers and rumors that the Marvels is a trash heap of a film. So
No, look, that one, I don't know. When it comes to the Marvels, I'm very careful about what people are saying, because
that's true, because people have agendas.
Yes. Especially
Right. Okay.
one of the main sites, one of the main YouTube channels that I know that we both watch, right? Like that person, when it comes to wokeism, has something very much against the Marvels and Brie Larson.
Yeah, and I would agree with your assertion there. I'd want to see it, but let's just face it. Ant-Man 3 wasn't exactly anything spectacular
But I don't
for fans, but quality's waning a little bit. It's worrisome.
I don't know what people
The
are expecting
DC guys
of
are
Ant-Man.
feeling confident.
Yeah, they shouldn't. I don't know what.
Yeah.
I don't know what people expected from Ant-Man. Really, I think that's part of the problem, right? I think people need to set their expectations again. But that's on Disney at this point. That is solely on Disney. It's kind of like those people who bought Gotham Knights thinking that it was going to be like an Arkham game. No, you just bought an action RPG, bitches.
Yep, and that got fixed this week, or recently.
It's funny, the last. I don't know. You didn't play before it got fixed. So literally, the day that I beat the game was one of their biggest updates when they actually added support for the PS5 controller. I'm like, motherfuckers.
Yeah, I'm loving it. Like, I just like the rumble things.
I didn't have any of that.
PS5.
Didn't have any of that when I played.
Yeah, it seems to be largely stable. I have no issues with it. The sound's powerful. I'm like, yeah, just sorry, I've distracted us from our
I was
Oscar
literally going to
talk.
say a classic Boris and Phil. How about we get back to the Academy Awards, the 95th Academy Awards, Best Film Editing, Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. If that didn't win, I would have been shocked, angry, and upset.
Yep, there's a lot of fast cuts in that movie.
That's what I mean, right? Oh my God! Especially as the movie goes on, they're like, the editing is spectacular. Whoever sat down, okay, and again, this leads me into Best Director, right? Like to think of needing XYZ shots, right? This goes out to the Daniel Kwan and Daniel Scheinert winning the Best Director for Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. I'm shocked, like that I didn't even think that this would win, and I don't know why. But again, once they went editing, I'm like, okay, this makes sense. So what I'm trying to say is, the forethought of making sure that you have that shot, making sure that it makes sense, making sure that it can all gel together. It's like for us amateurs who make 30-second videos, right? For YouTube, not porn, YouTube. It just, I think you really start appreciating the vision that some of these actual directors have, right? And I know, like, I'm putting this like so minor, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, like these guys are apparently, they did music videos before.
Yeah.
Like they're not even classical. I don't know what their degree of classical training for a director, but they're doing these hot takes, they're doing these videos, and they're able to envision what kind of the breadth of everything that they need, and then edit it together and get it like you say. I'm sitting there at the end watching all these timelines collide, or all these people's timelines collide, and understanding what's going on. And that's a feat. That's an accomplishment. So congrats to them. Well deserved.
Best animated feature goes out to our boy Guillermo del Toro and Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, beating out Turning Red, Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, Puss in Boots, and the Sea Beast.
Yeah, I think if Turning Red won it, then you'd have a big argument for Puss in Boots could have won it, but I think Pinocchio, this was an achievement. It really was what he did with that medium and that movie, because that was stop motion.
It's also Guillermo del Toro. He's got his friends in the Academy, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's always that.
He's had
aspect.
success. Yes. Yeah. He's had success, but it was good if you haven't watched it. And there's even a How They Did It show on Netflix.
Best Supporting Actress. Jamie Lee Curtis finally got her award for Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, beating out Angela Bassett for Black Panther, Carrie Condon for The Banshees of Inisherin, Hong Chow for The Whale, and Stephanie Su for Everything, Everywhere, All at Once.
Yeah, 2 candidates in there.
Yep.
Congrats to her, Man, oh man, when I was a kid, I was a Jamie Lee Curtis fan.
True lies. Need I say more?
Exactly. That or a Fish Called Wanda.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of low-cut tops in that.
Speaking of 20-second YouTube shorts, Best Supporting Actor. Ke Kwan for Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, beating up Brendan Gleeson from The Banshees of Inisherin, Brian Tyree Henry from Causeway, Barry Cogan from The Banshees of Inisherin, and Jude Hirsch from The Fabelmans.
And when you watch his acceptance speech, if you don't cry, you don't have a soul.
Honestly, here's the thing. Harrison Ford, around the time that 2015, 14, 15, 16, around the time that Star Wars came out, Harrison Ford wasn't all there.
Yeah.
Right? But he seems a lot more there now than he has in a really long time.
There's something that's happened where the wall has come down, because he lets a lot more through. And I think that's why I like Shrinking so much too. Is because it's a whole new angle on Harrison Ford.
It's Harrison Ford like you've never seen him before.
And I feel like this is the way, if Harrison Ford was my granddad, I feel like this is what he would be like. Like, right? I don't think the character is far off of who the man is.
Yeah. I think that's part of it, right? It's kind of like Jack Nicholson as he got older, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just such a cool thing to see. There was moments last night where I was just overwhelmed. This was one of them, and the one at the end of the Oscars with seeing the two of them. And yeah, just there are times when these award shows can be a labor to watch. I don't really want to watch it on that Sunday night or anything. But I realized we're probably going to need to talk about it. And sometimes you just got to put yourself through it. And I don't know. I had a smile on my face for a lot of last night, just seeing Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, getting a little bit of recognition.
Mm-hmm. Best Original Song. Actually surprised this didn't go to Rihanna for Lift Me Up. Went to Not To. That one actually surprised me just because, Rihanna. It's Rihanna. But again, the Academy. You never know how the Academy is going to vote. Best Actor, Brendan Fraser for The Whale.
Another, a little bit teary on that one.
I just recently obtained it. I think that's my late night viewing for tonight.
Nice.
Yeah.
I've got it. I haven't watched it. I don't know if I can. I'm all cried out this week.
Best actress.
It's bad when you have to say that.
Best actress. Michelle Yeoh wins for Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. And then Best Picture, Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, beating out Top Gun Maverick, Women Talking, Triangle of Sadness, All Quiet on the Western Front, Elvis, The Banshees of Inisherin, The Fablesman, Avatar, The Way of Water, and Tar.
Yeah, that's a long list.
So,
but
what's amazing is this little movie that came out April 1st, 2022, predominantly people of color and Asian descent in this movie, getting all this recognition. It's great to see. I really do like this. A24, fantastic studio or producer or distributor. So really good. I had this conversation this morning with Matt, and I think he was really going for what was it? He was really going for the Banshees of.
Oh, that looks like it might be a good movie.
Now,
yeah.
So he brought up a good point, and I kind of agree with him, but at the same time, he hasn't seen Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. And his point was this is the Academy's way of kind of making it look like they're hip, like they're cool, like they're sorry for past years of being ignorant douches.
There's an element to that, but I don't think these. I think it's more so I frame it from this perspective. They're actually acknowledging that some of this alternative filmmaking ideas are good instead of just rewarding the same type of movie over and over again, which they've done in the past. And I know that's been associated with a race like white people and, even exclusionary of females. They're taking the baby steps. Are they taking the giant strides? No, but given all that's gone on, man, like that was a very innovative movie and it got the recognition. So I'm happy for everybody involved. And I'm actually going to go and conversely, like watch another A24 production called After Yang, starring Colin Farrell.
Yeah.
And a mixed race cast. And it's kind of sci-fi-ish. It's kind of interesting, but this studio has my attention.
A24 is actually, sorry for cutting off. A24 is actually producing a wrestling movie called The Iron Claw, based off of the Von Erichs. Very famous family, very tragic story, based off of the Von Erichs, who were huge in the States, especially Texas. That's where they had their promotion. That's the Von Erichs, going to be called The Iron Claw, A24. Zac Efron, he's going to be in it. He's going to be playing Kevin Von Erich. Jeremy Allen White, Lip, from Shameless, is going to be in it. He's going to be playing probably the most famous Von Erich, at least for people my age, because if you watched WWE, WWF at the time, you probably saw the Texas Tornado, and he's going to be playing Kerry Von Erich. This cast is huge. This cast is crazy, and this being a A24 film, it's going to be big, to say the least.
That's great. Studio, like I say, has my attention. I'm curious to see more from them. And I think one of the changes was, remember there was a couple years ago at the Academy, they gave it to a Korean film, Best Picture. I forget the name of the movie now. It slipped my mind. That was a good movie too, right? It's all about these people faking what they were doing and being fraudulent to get things in life and get ahead. Yes, Parasite. Great movie. So I just think it signals that change where it's like,
And
other ways to tell a story, creative ways.
the
Like
other
my
thing,
friend texted me and he said, to him, Everything Everywhere, that movie to him is going to be remembered like Pulp Fiction or Memento. It's just a game changer in how it's approaching filmmaking. And it's going to be that bookmark. Like, yeah, after that movie, we got a lot of movies that had similar type stuff. That was his point, is like, it'll be studied as to what it was.
Yeah, for sure. I can see that for sure. Yeah, I forgot what my point was going to be. I guess it really doesn't matter.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. But oh yeah, I remember what I was going to say. One thing I do want to bring up is, as we're talking about this, right? The Academy, whether they be righting some wrongs, whether they want to be showing that they're cool and hip, whether they're making small strides into rectifying past issues and past problems, without actually admitting that they do have problems. I don't want to take away from the work of anyone who won, right? Like Brendan Fraser in The Whale. I don't want to take away a lot of people, and even I kind of insinuated this in my earlier podcast, where he kind of won because it's Hollywood's way and the Academy's way of saying mea culpa for, treating you like shit for almost 2 decades, right? And I don't want to take away from his performance. I don't want to take anything away from Everything Everywhere All at Once because of what we're saying, right? They were fantastic movies that needed and deserved to be recognized. So I'm happy that they are getting recognized.
Yeah, really, at the end of the day, it's always going to be controversial picking one out of a group. It's, to me, I look at the makeup of the group, right? Like, how many different filmmakers, or, even in this case, I feel like a lot of the same films are represented, but those must be top of the crop, right? But I did see some diversiveness, which has been better than what they don't admit to before. So I don't know. I think some years are better than others for other groups. And, that's, I'm really excited and happy for the people who did win. Put it that way. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly it.
There's always going to be the ability to sit here and say, well, what about this movie, and pick an X. And movies are subjective.
100%. Right? I think that's what we all need to remember, how subjective movies are. And I think just being in certain fandoms, you kind of get drenched and you see this more, right? Being in the wrestling fandom, being in the comic fandom, being a Star Wars fan.
Oh, yes. I'm used to the blistering heat of the Star War.
Yep. All right. Let's quickly pay the page and let's talk about what the hell is going on, because like I mentioned earlier, it was a very scary weekend, right? So last week, 2 banks essentially closed up. The first one, and probably the bigger one for me, was Silicon Valley Bank. So all of this happened in just 48 hours. So here's a quick view. I took notes from a bunch of places, and I just want to give people a timeline on what the hell is going on. All right. So this is the collapse of the 16th largest lender in the United States, and it's the biggest bank failure since the Washington Mutual fell more than a decade ago. Let's start with the good news. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said that the Biden administration will not bail out the closed bank, but is working to help the depositors concerned about their money. The Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation insures deposits of up to $250,000 American. But the way that this works is that it's per branch, per account. But here's the but. A lot of the companies and the rich people who use this bank had more than that in their bank. So will be interesting to kind of see what happens. So here's kind of how things happen. March 8th, the bank sold $21 billion of securities from its portfolio. That's never a good sign. The plan was to reinvest the proceeds, and this was going to generate an after-tax loss of $1.8 billion for the first quarter. They also announced offerings for $1.25 billion of its stock and $500 million of securities. So that was a big red flag. That was a huge red flag. Overnight, their shares plunged by 41%. It was the biggest decline since 1998. The slump in their shares came after they announced that it had sold all of the available for sale securities in its portfolio and updated its forecast for the year to include a sharper decline in net interest income. March 10th, a very prominent venture capitalist started saying, withdraw your money. This is when shit hit the fan. So this is March 10th. This is Friday morning, afternoon. And what ended up happening was people were drawing more than the bank actually had. The stocks were halted after a sharp sell-off in pre-market trading. So this is all in the morning. The stock was trading at $63.99 before the bell and was on course to open in its lowest number in over a decade. This is when the U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said, and I quote, "There are recent developments that concern a few banks that I am monitoring very closely." Later that day, in the afternoon, California regulator but shut Silicon Valley Bank and appointed the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation as receiver. So this was shut down by the government. Shares of the bank were halted after tumbling 66% and a shit ton of withdrawals, more than the bank actually had. So this bank, the Silicon Valley Bank, this bank is essential for tech companies. This bank helps tech companies get started up. They help startups. They help with things like payroll. They help with loans. They help doing some of the corporate banking stuff that a startup needs. So this bank was essential to a lot of Silicon Valley and general startups all around the world. So this is a huge blow to the tech industry. I don't think people realize, without startups around, what's going to happen to, are we going to be able to invent? Are we going to be able to do new stuff? Are we going to be able to move forward? What's going to happen to the tech industry? And that's where a lot of people really freaking out. As I mentioned earlier, and all I can really say is that a lot of my, not a lot, I had some customers who use this bank. So the big question was, are we getting paid for the work we've done? Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Right? So,
yeah.
Luckily, go ahead.
It really. Oh, sorry. It draws about the concern that, for me, in that without this type of bank there, it just means that the Googles get bigger and the Apples get bigger. If there's not people innovating and doing startups as easily, then it just means that the corporations start absorbing them or absorbing their ideas or cannibalizing what remains out there that's basically on shaky financial ground. And we're already fighting that with Microsoft buying Activision Blizzard. You know what I mean? Like, we're already seeing the government start to put up the red flags on that kind of stuff for the FTC and whatnot. And it's just interesting that this will probably cascade into more corporate issues in the long run.
Here's a couple quotes that really show stuff. So on March 10th, 2023, user Another Cohen tweeted this. "I don't think many people understand the level of chaos happening in tech right now. This is just fucking insane." Separate quote. "Every group chat, Slack, and email chain I'm in is going crazy. Founders have no idea if they'll make payroll. Investors have no idea which companies are impacted or if LP funds are safe. Employees don't have the slightest clue what's going on." So, this is huge. And it's, to me, it's crazy how secondary news this has been.
Yeah, in a way. You know what? Like, I turned on this morning and had CBC on, and they cut live to Biden. So I knew that this was ringing large, but I think that there's this assumption in media, especially in Canada, that we've got these huge banks and this can't happen here.
It
So
can,
don't worry
but
about it. And
it can,
but
it's a lot harder.
It's a lot harder to have happen, but it still doesn't stop these banks from operating within Canada. As Silicon Valley Bank has offices in Toronto. They have offices they had offices in Europe. Obviously, the UK sold it for £1 British to HSBC to take it on and whatnot today. Like
in the UK, it was announced today that Barclays is actually closing more branches. Right? There's a banking crisis happening, and you're seeing the ripple effect of something like a Silicon Valley Bank closing, right? All across the world. Here in Canada, because we're Canadian, we're based in Canada. Let's talk about how this affects Canada. The closure of Silicon Valley Bank, it plays a super different role here. It doesn't have a banking license and only provides venture debt locally. So, unlike their American counterparts, Canadian companies likely won't have their funds with the bank. However, Canadian startups that have their U.S. banking with Silicon Valley Bank or ostensibly Canadian companies that are legally domiciled in the U.S. for tax purposes and use SVB will be impacted by the closure. Basically saying, if these Canadian startups wanted to play the system and gamble by going and opening up a branch in the States and using the States branch as their primary American branch of whatever, of banking, they got fucked. Which a lot of Canadian companies do. A lot of Canadian companies have to have an American bank. So here's a fun thing, and I'm saying funny using air quotes. I wish we had video. Is that some American companies refuse to pay you unless you use an American bank.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I honestly wouldn't be. And I found it was interesting this morning as well, just a footnote on everything too, is that Biden specifically said people who invested in the bank will not be getting money from the government because that's how capitalism works, was what he said. They speculated and they lost. Now, so I was very, very positioned in the 2008.
I was literally going to say this
collapse.
The same person didn't have that view in 2008.
Yeah, that is very true. But I also saw it from the bankers' side, and this is the part that I found personally discouraging. Was getting into an elevator and hearing a guy basically say, we're getting bailout money from the Canadian government. And then the guy's laughing and going, what do you think the odds are that we're going to let it go through to the people they're intending it to?
Exactly.
Or we could just take that money, invest it for ourselves, build up our own capital, like the bank's capital, and then pay it back interest free to the government. And that was their attitude. And as a person, I was defeated because I'm like, that's supposed to be for regular people to approach you guys and to say, I want to do this or I need help with that and get that money that way and not have you be penalized. Like, here's money from government, pass it along. Pay it back. Pay it forward.
Well, that's the issue when you just willy-nilly give bailouts without any conditions, right? Like here in Ontario, right? Let's take a look at what the federal government is doing with essentially, in my opinion, say what you want about my opinion at this point, but it's a bailout to the entire every province's medical and system. The federal government right now is on the hook to give billions of dollars to the provinces because the provinces just mismanage funds like there's no tomorrow. I know that we had the pandemic, but here in Ontario, billions were given to Ontario and not and we didn't use a cent for the medical system. So now it's on the federal government to bail out the provinces. But what I do like about the way that it's happening is that there are conditions, because that if it was unconditional, we would be seeing a lot more private clinics here in Ontario. So I'm liking that they're finally putting their foot down on these loans, and I'm hoping that if there are bailouts or money given to banks and the banking system. It is with conditions, because
Yeah, I
or
would
else you're
agree.
going to see exactly what you just described, because exactly what you just described is what happened throughout the world, especially in the States and in Canada. And what did the banks do? They doubled down on their dirty investments and their securities from the mortgage, and crash, and they recreated the exact same ones with a new name.
Yep. It was, I can't, it sounds too good to be true to be the fly on the wall overhearing that, but I can't overstate it. That is emphatically true. That was my experience. And you could literally see my heart being broken, just about thinking. It stuck with me. And I tossed and turned it. And I am, going to say this personally as well about these clinics, because you brought it up, but it's a sore spot for me.
Yes.
Because I've been using a clinic for certain health things and being charged, and they used a lot of intimidation and fear to justify those charges.
Of course.
And it's not right. And I was really happy last week when the government made the announcement that if that kind of crap is going on, it has to stop right now. And if the provinces are feeding those things that money, then the money's going to get clawed back. It's not going to go.
And that's the thing, right?
That's
all
what
for
they need to do in this case.
Conditional loans, conditional bailouts. But what we saw in 2008 and what we constantly see, it just doesn't work, because the people who actually need it, the quote unquote trickle down economics, doesn't really trickle down. Anyways, that's our chat. So the tech industry,
that's as political as we get.
The whole point is that I'm trying to get here is that the tech industry is very iffy right now. I don't want to say unstable.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of questions.
But it's perched.
Yes.
On a precipice.
All right, so let's talk about something. Let's get out of misery and get out of depression. Let's talk about The Last of Us.
End of the world, baby.
All right, so here's some good news for The Last of Us. The Last of Us continues to bring in huge numbers for HBO. Last night's finale brought 75% more viewers than the season premiere. Episode 9 drew in 8.2 million viewers for the Sunday premiere, which marks a 3.5 million increase over episode 1, which drew 4.7 million. The Last of Us saw growth every single week across its 9-episode run, with the exception of episode 5's 11.6 million.
It's impressive. It's very impressive. So I can't say enough good things about the show. I really can't. I'm just sad it's over now. It's as much as we're celebrating Ted Lasso, taking one for the team on this.
So I don't want to get too deep into it, because there was some rockin' stuff in this episode. But let's just announce that we will be recording a Last of Us special in the very, very, very near future, where if listen to the episode and watch the episode, because we'll be recording it for video when you've seen everything. But make sure to watch it, because we're gonna go deep into things. We're not gonna break it down like we would other shows, but I just want to have a more open and free talk without being too scared of spoilers. But we're gonna contain the spoilers to what we've only seen on screen on HBO. I don't want to talk about video games and part 2 and stuff. Anyways, so for the sake of this and for the sake of this conversation, what did you think of the finale, Phil?
I was pretty happy with it. I was a little bit disappointed seeing the runtime. Obviously, more time in this world is better time. There were some things that were not ordered the way that I remembered them, but they worked well within this episode and what it was doing. And as well, I thought it was jarring for me to hear Ashley Johnson doing like Ellie's voice from the video game. I know you said we're not allowed to talk about the video game, but it's not a giveaway. just her performance as Ellie's mom was absolutely jarring for me, because hearing her voice, you spend so much time with that game with her as a protagonist, and wow, it just was just, I don't know, it was just a lot. It hit hard.
Yeah.
No crying, just hit hard. That's all. It was just like,
I have a huge crush on Ashley Johnson. Like, since her days on Step by Step, basically, just because, like, I've always we're kind of the same age, right? So, yeah,
it's I've never seen her. I've never consciously knowingly seen her.
She's literally the only reason why I give Critical Role a chance.
Oh, I see. I don't even watch Critical Role.
She's literally the only reason I do. And when she sometimes she's like working on stuff. A few years ago, when she was working on The Last of Us Part 2, especially, she was gone for a few months. So I'm like not even going near the show when she's gone.
Wow. Okay. I where do you check this show out?
YouTube.
Okay, I'll check it out. I'll go down that rabbit hole, because I've heard so much about it. I know I've heard it talked about. So
yep.
Obviously, with everything that went on with the Wizards of the Coast.
Yep.
So
exactly.
Yeah. So I'm curious. Well, I did do one thing. I want to point this out.
You did do one thing. What did you do, Phil?
This is not related, but it rings a bell with us talking about Critical Role. Is that I got rid of my Marvel Unlimited subscription because I just wasn't using it. And I did pick up a Kindle Unlimited subscription because I have an ebook device. And I found out that, holy crap, Jim Zub has a whole ton of Dungeons and Dragons comics for free on Kindle Unlimited. And the great thing is that I saw him tweet, and he gets paid for this stuff through the National Library program.
Yep.
So it's essentially like renting the book from the library, and he gets compensated by the government.
Yep.
So
Jim Zub, that's where he really made his name.
Yeah, I have guilt-free access to a lot of work by Jim Zub, and I'm excited by that.
And the reason why
he's been on the show.
Exactly. We bring him up, friend of the show, essentially my neighbor in Toronto. So, I try to support him whenever I can. Great writer, even better person, great views. One of the most open and honest people in the industry.
Yes, he's very knowledgeable, and he's very good at sharing that knowledge, which is just a great combination.
Yeah.
He's not just brilliant, he's able to articulate how the brilliance works and how it can become a tool for you.
And so with his role as a teacher, he's obviously very interested in the next generation and making sure the next generation is as prepared, if not more prepared than he was.
Yeah. And like I say, I just can't, as somebody who's talked with him on the show and whatnot and supported him in other projects and whatnot, I went hog wild crazy because I am reading on Kindle Unlimited the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle book about the Ronin that you recommended, and I didn't even realize this. I was like, oh man, I got to be getting to the end of this first issue or whatever the intervals are. 218 bloody pages.
Mm-hmm.
This is not your regular, this is a good graphic novel.
Daddy's Turtles right now.
Right. I'm just like, wow, this is a substantial story.
Yep.
So
what do you think? What do you think?
I got to say, good on Kindle Unlimited for having this stuff for $10 a month. It actually, I was a little bit suspicious about the service, but now I'm like, whew. Oh, I'm loving Ronan. Like I'm trying to figure out at this point which turtle he is. My heart goes to Raphael because he's always been my guy, my turtle. But I know that's controversial. But the only reason why that is because Raphael came out at the end of it being the one that was wearing the red bandana on the multicolored fiasco that is, the Nickelodeon TMNT, which I have a tough time with.
The kidifization.
But understand.
Yeah.
The cowabunga pizza dudes, thing. Like, ugh. But that being said, I play Shredder's Revenge on Xbox. Like, you know, I do buy it to a degree.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm loving it. And thanks for the recommendation. I'm just, it's going to take me a while to hack through,
Yeah.
even with the panels that just say blap and flump and stuff.
Well,
so
I find because it is Eastman and Laird, you really want to take everything in.
yes, you want to take in like the art, and you also, it is refreshing. It does remind me of the original books in the sense that not a lot needs to be said, but the panel can still have really high impact.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's good. I'm enjoying what I'm reading and what I'm experiencing. So it's been the first time that I've enjoyed a comic in a long time.
Yeah.
So, and I am looking forward to, like I say, the Jim Zub Dungeons and Dragons, and even downloaded the preview for Dungeons and Dragons Stranger Things by Jim Zub, and even some of his Rick and Morty comics. So it's a good thing. Just support your local artists.
Exactly. Yeah, going back to Last of Us. So I really enjoyed it. I think that it was a really well done series and episode. And I know some people might be complaining about exactly how it ended and how fast everything felt, but I think that they did a good job of translating the video game to the show, and it left us with the moral question, and this isn't any spoilers, but did Joel do the right thing? We'll talk more on that on our Last of Us special, but I feel like they were able to really portray that moral question that you were left with after playing the video game the same way that, here on the show, I should say.
Yeah, well, and you have to remember, though, too, for everybody playing the video game and whatnot, you can spend an hour, 2 hours even, just doing frustrating levels, adjusting difficulty, trying to do the dog fights in the hospital, everything like that, trying to get Joel to where he needs to be. You don't need to do that in film, in making a show, right? And that pacing, sure, I get it. There's a lot jammed into this episode, especially if you played the game. There's a lot, but
it still follows it
worked
quite closely.
Yeah, it does, man. Like I was impressed with. I want to go back and watch some of the video game and just see, because I've seen some side-by-side comparisons and I'm absolutely blown away.
Yep.
The ordering's a bit different, but the impact's high.
What I like about it is that it did add more to Ellie's backstory in a sense, right? Because a lot of fan theories about her backstory were answered in the show. Again, we'll talk more about that when we can get into
apparently spoilers. This was lifted out of the comic, which a lot of people don't read, right? And like there was a comic, but
episode 6 in the mall. It's very similar. 7, whichever it was.
The mall episode was the expanded content, the DLC.
Well, but based off of the comic as well.
Yes, and that is part of that. So it's wow, geeks.
We'll talk.
What are you gonna do?
All things Last of Us in our special. We'll try to get that this week.
Yeah, I'm excited for it.
So,
and that means we're gonna transition to Star Wars.
All right, I'm gonna let you take the wheel on this one.
Okay, I want to start with a little story, a non sequitur.
Is this your Lego story?
This is my Lego story.
I should have asked whether it was Star Wars related, but I assumed it was.
It is.
Okay.
Yes, it is. If it's Lego, it's most likely Star Wars. So, interesting story about this. If you've built Lego, you know the dread when you open a box and you're missing pieces. Doesn't happen often, but I had a 501st Battle Pack. All right. My brother, a great guy, Gary, showers me with gifts on birthdays and Christmas and things like that. And I have been a little bit greedy with this set. Therefore, I have about 10 of them. And I got the new Commander set that Lego just made in January, or just started distributing in January, which comes with a whole bunch of extra pieces. So I pulled from my stockpile the top 501st Lego set because I wanted to build it, and I haven't built one yet. I open it up. It was sealed, like factory sealed. I open up the first bag like I normally do. I empty out the parts into my trays that I'm OC about. And I noticed something. There's no minifigures in this battle pack.
Oh my God.
And I open the second bag and I'm like, there's no minifigures. So I go and I'm like freaking out at this point. Like, did somebody tamper with the box? And did Lego put all the minifigures in its own bag? And all somebody had to do was sneak into Walmart with a knife, open the thing, and then retape it somehow afterwards, or buy it, take it home, take the bag out that they didn't want, bring it back and say it's still sealed. That type of thing. I don't know what scammers do, but I was worried about that. So I opened it, another one, and the minifigs are in the bags that are definitely sealed. So I'm like, what the heck do I do? It threw me.
Right.
So I called Lego last week and I talked with a representative. Now, these 10 boxes have either been gifted to me or I have bought in the wild.
Right.
I don't have any receipt to show that these are legitimate purchases by me. The only parts that were in that box that were for a minifigure were for the battle droids. There was 2 arms to make one battle droid, but nothing else. There was no battle droid parts or anything. So anyhow, I talked with this nice guy, representative on the phone, and they are shipping the parts for all of the minifigure clones and the battle droids to me via Denmark.
Oh, wow.
The factory in Denmark.
Wow.
And it's a retired set. It's retired. So, whoa, what an experience, though. What a company. I got to say, as much as I dread Lego prices, and especially Lego Star Wars prices, for those of you out there, you'll notice that a 4+ set that had 60 pieces for Star Wars was $35 USD. And this week, they announced that there's a Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark set that has 600 pieces and more minifigs in that other set. And it is $40.
Wow.
That just shows the cost of that Star Wars logo and just what Lego does on the bad side. But that being said, great customer experience.
Yeah,
I gave plenty good feedback. And that's not my first time having an experience like that. So good on them.
Dude, that's crazy. That is crazy.
I told the guy, I'm like, you have no reason to believe anything that I'm saying. And I get that. Like, I wouldn't believe this. I bought a minifig pack and there's no minifigs in it.
Yeah.
Send me more. Like, you know, like he's just apologizing left and right. I'm like, I happen to be a shameful adult that has many of these sets. Like,
look, we talked about this a few weeks ago. There's no such thing as shameful adults because toys are essentially made for people between our ages.
Yeah, I agree. But I still feel embarrassed when I'm talking to somebody. It's like when you call Amazon to complain about the replica mechanical glove. No, the replica mechanical Thanos glove that came that was actually made out of rubber, shipped from China. Right? It's
that
like, isn't the Hasbro? Oh, that like stunk. And she's just laughing at me. And she's like, I know, I should know better. And I shouldn't be spending my money on this, but I am a geek. So, duh. She's just laughing at me.
I know, right? So funny.
Anyhow, Star Wars.
Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 2. Chapter, what is this at this point? 19, 21?
18.
I don't even know at this point.
17 last week, 18 this week.
So, where do we start?
Look, 13-year-old me was completely overwhelmed. All right. The kid who always dreamt of seeing this stuff got to see it. I don't know if it's watching The Last of Us. I don't know if it was Andor. I don't know what changed doing this podcast.
It's this podcast.
I watched this episode and I thought the writing is awful. Like, the writing is absolutely different. Put it that way. I won't say it was bad, awful. It was just different. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm accepting this change properly. So it's when he shows up at Pelimoto's place and he says, I'm looking for a droid to go spelunking. That in other seasons of The Mandalorian was an entire episode.
Yep.
Okay, you need this unit. It'll do the job. But what I need you to do is go to this crime lord and do this job for me, or go to this and do this because mama needs more money, and then you'll be in my good books.
Yep.
Instead, it's just like, no, just take this one. And then the next thing you know, he's flying away with it. And I'm like, and I'll even retrofit your N95 Starfighter. And, just, oh my gosh, I was just like, what the heck is going on here?
Right. So
now, that
it's
being
funny
said,
because, like, before you move forward with this, when we were kind of getting idea of what this season was going to be about, and he was going to go to Mandalore and blah, 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 literally, I thought where we are right now would lead us into 3/4 of the season.
Yeah, exactly. So first season, it's protect the child. That's the mission. Yeah. Second season is get them to a Jedi.
Yep. Looking for the fireflies, right? Okay.
Yeah, but last episode, here's Luke. Oh my God. Shocker, world erupts into Star Wars pandemonium. Third season, stated objective.
Well,
bathe in the minds of Mandalore.
Season 2.5. You got to bring up season 2. But you know what? But we should have known about the pacing based off of the 2 episodes from the book of Boba Fett.
Boba Fett. That was the crack in the armor, because it was like, get the child back. Instead of an entire season of get the child back, it was 2 episodes embedded into another series.
And Luke proving yet again he is literally the worst teacher in all of galaxies far and near away.
Well, he's just a farmer's kid. Come on.
Well, he's like Wayne Gretzky, right? Best in the world at playing, sucks at teaching.
Yep. So, and here we are, second episode, and we've achieved that. So now it's positioned in an interesting way. There still is a very good path of redemption for me, because now you have carte blanche to blow my mind. Go or do your Star Wars. There's a possibility this shit's the bed.
Yes. That's what I'm worried about right now. Right? Like, where are they going to go with this?
I don't know. This
okay. Let's be honest, Phil. This is a good problem to have, right? Like, I don't want to sound like every single Star Wars fan because it didn't play out the way it did in my head. I'm angry now. No.
No.
All about waiting and seeing where we're going at this point. But the pacing has just been absolutely crazy. Like, even this episode, like, how many round trips did Grogu do to Mandalore?
Oh, he did at least 1 and then 2. Don't even get me started on that. It's not hate. It's just critical weirdness for me. Is just how easy everything was.
Yes.
But I guess like this is just Star making Wars. The story go, right?
To feel like the Star Wars movies, even their cuts, even the jumps in times within their cuts and the edits, even how easy everything happens. It's really starting to feel like Star Wars again.
Yeah, and I can't, like I say, I can't complain about it because it's always had that campy aspect The Mandalorian has. It's just, it's different in that pacing, and I don't know if it's Dave Filoni is
You
off
know what it is?
on Ahsoka. John is just.
I think it's partially this. I think it's partially that they want to go in a completely different direction, so they kind of want to wrap some stuff up. I also feel like this is falling into your typical Disney issue, your MCU issue, where this is going to lead into someone else's story. Someone else being Ahsoka and Ezra and Thrawn. I think that's where we're going to be going very soon. And space whales and all that fun stuff. And I also think that we've been spoiled by the pacing and the storytelling and the grit and adultness of Andor.
There's that. And as well, like, don't discount, even though there was hokiness in the previous seasons of The Mandalorian, it had a more Western vibe.
Yes.
That Western vibe is starting to shake off.
Well, because the Western is done.
Yeah, and it's starting to take on a new metamorphosis. I'm not saying that change is bad. I'm just noting that change is happening. And it is difficult at moments because I liked the enemy crab robot eye thing. I liked a lot of, there was new boundaries being pushed. There was things I didn't care for, Grogu with the flip, but I know that they took that right off of Yoda in episode 2. I just thought it was overused. I did enjoy Bo-Katan. I did enjoy the actual angle that they took with her being so cynical with Din about the Mandalorian traditions. And then you could see in Din's reverence for that tradition when he was stepping into the waters that her mind was being changed. She was thinking, maybe Din's right about this. Mm-hmm. You could tell that she's starting to, like, maybe this goes to the point where she joins the Watch. You know what I mean? Like, it's a possibility at this point. And I got to say, the funny thing that I think a lot of people missed out on, do you think the Mythosaur pulled Din in?
No.
He just sunk to the bottom because he took his rocket pack off in the Beskar.
That's what I
So
think.
she dove in because she knew he was in trouble, and she watched him because she was mesmerized by the act, and he misstepped and fell into the open cavern instead of just dunking himself. Mm-hmm. She went down there, and that's when she sees said Mythosaur. So now that's, and Din potentially didn't see it. He's passed out drinking water.
Yeah.
There's a lot of interesting stuff going on there. As much as I'm bringing about the pacing issues, there's some juicy content in here that I just absolutely devoured.
Yeah. What do you think of Din Djarin's character this season? Do you think he's kind of like a little lost? Do you think he's like just too gullible, naive, stupid? Like, he seems very different than normal. Fatherhood has changed him.
He does, in the sense that this has been papered up as this mission or this objective. In a way, I think the pacing changes that we've noted mean that we might get to where we actually should be going with him and seeing a little bit more proper development once he gets this bathing in the mines sorted, right? Like the baptism sorted. It's going to be interesting to see when he goes to the armorer and actually, tries to convince her that he has atoned.
Yeah.
He has done this. Like, I'm curious if she's going to accept it or fight it, or if that's going to cause tension, with the other Mandalorians in the tribe, that type of thing. And just a footnote as well, Emily Swallow is the actress who plays the armorer. She's at the Toronto Comic-Con this upcoming weekend.
Yep.
So if you want to meet her or get her autograph or picture or whatever, selfie, whatever she's doing, I'm sure that you're going to be able to read that on the Toronto Comic-Con site. So quick little shout out to all you nerds who want to go and be sweaty with everybody.
Yep, exactly. There you go. All right. Be sweaty with everyone. All right. Dank and Moist Comic-Con.
Dank and Moist.
All right, Phil, you know what time it is.
I certainly do. It is time to visit us on our website at www.itscanonpodcast.com. And I apologize for that because I'm off my pace. You can track us down on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at It's Canon Podcast. You can email us at show@itscanonpodcast.com. You can subscribe via Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, Podbean, patreon.com/SNME radio. Really, anywhere that you find podcasts, you're going to find us. If you like what you hear, tell your friends, and be sure to subscribe and leave a review.
Thank you for that.
And thank you for spending the time with us.
Yep. There seems to be an issue with the website right now. I don't know what the heck's going on. It says our account's suspended, and I'm like, what the hell? So I'll fix that, right? I think it's a resourcing issue again, but I'll deal with that. But go visit us, itscanonpodcast.com. Just subscribe everywhere. Thank you again for listening to us, whether that's been the first episode or the 100th plus episode that you're listening to. It really means a lot to all of us. We're the It's Canon Podcast, a show where we love to talk about all things, everything, and the best part of it all is that it's all in canon. He's Phil. I'm Boris. Until next time, stay tranquilo.